Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dave, and we are the IB English guys. And today we are going to talk about the paper 2.
It's back, Mr. Giles, and we love it. Folks, our preview for today is as follows. First, we're going to go over the requirements and basic attributes of the paper 2. We're then going to talk about why we love paper 2. We'll introduce to you the Fabulous Four, which is a great strategy you can apply to break down questions and get on your pathway to success. And lastly, we will give you some really tangible steps for success that you can apply when you're crafting your thesis and getting ready to write.
Perfect. So let's start with just what is the paper 2? What is required? First of all, the paper 2 is a comparative essay. You're going to be given 4 questions of a general nature, and you are going to apply those questions to 2 literary works. So this is a literary task for all courses, and it's an hour and 45 minutes for both SL and HL, and it's 35% for the SL students and 25% for the HL students.
Of course, you can't use a text that you've already used for the higher level essay or individual oral, so keep that in mind when you're approaching questions. Mr. Giles, why do we love the paper 2 so much? And we do love it.
The first thing is that it's all about intertextuality, and this is one of our areas of exploration. This is about taking 2 texts that are going to have a lot of really interesting differences, but also finding some commonalities and talking about these 2 things and comparing them.
Yeah, another thing we like is we believe the paper 2 is in our control. Why would I say that, Mr. Giles? It's under our control.
Yeah, we know that the questions are somewhat unknown, but we have these texts in front of us. We can study them, we can research them, and we want to walk in with that expert knowledge so that we can answer the question.
Yeah, lastly, folks, we love the paper 2 because it centers around literature. We really believe that literature fosters a deeper understanding of the human condition. It fosters empathy, and it's a chance for you to take knowledge from these works and really look at it in a real-world context and answer some really tough questions about what these texts mean to us and how we can become better humans in society.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you. I love paper 2.
We're readers, and we like to respond to literature. So now we're going to give you the Fab Four. And I just want to say thanks to Caroline Hazel, one of our colleagues. She's given us some really good information on paper 2. And again, it's really useful. So we want to share some of these skills with you. The first skill I want to highlight, the first member of the Fabulous Four, is answering the question. Your goal, your job in the paper 2 is to respond in detail to that specific question. So if you want to have a backbone of the paper 2, it's the question.
Please do not start with backbones in this component, okay? Not necessary, okay? The second element of the Fab Four is knowing and understanding the themes and details of your literary works. You've studied these in great detail with your teacher, with your peers, and you want to think about what are those big global main ideas, global understandings that you can attach to one of these 4 questions and show that you've deeply understood the work in a nuanced and thematic way.
I liked how you brought in the question there too. The third member of the Fabulous Four is knowing and understanding the style and language of the text. This is about authorial choices. This sometimes is a pitfall of many paper 2 writers because they get caught up in the text and they have to remember to talk about the author's choices in response to the question.
Yeah, folks, we're always talking about authorial craft in the entire course. Regardless of the aspect, the component, stay on the authorial choices and craft. The last element of the Fab Four, Mr. Giles, is we have to compare and contrast. Go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a comparative paper. So we need to point out similarities and differences of these 2 texts quite frequently. We want to have a comparative thesis statement. We want to try to have comparative topic sentences. We also want to integrate subtle differences and similarities in our writing. So again, we're keeping that comparative hat on the whole time.
Mr. Giles, it sounds like this might be time for a worksheet of sentence stems and comparative language. What do you think?
Sounds like you got some work to do.
Sounds like you need to make that.
So let's talk about the steps we want to follow when we're doing our planning. The first step is just to write out the question. When you write out the question, you're able to really focus in on some of those details, and it also will be at the top of your paper, of your planning. Very important.
Yeah, and once you've done that, folks, step 2 is to look at that question and identify any keywords and the question words that the IB is asking. It's very important that you interpret and define these words in your paper to show that you've understood the question in relation to your works.
Yeah, so now this third step is where we start to do that heavy lifting, and now we have to think about crafting a good comparative thesis statement that answers the question. This is going to take a little bit of time, but you write that out because this is going to be your argument that's going to guide your paper.
Yeah. Once you've got that thesis pretty much where you want it, we believe it's really crucial for you to write a rudimentary outline. Think about those body paragraphs. Think about the focus and the direction of your paper. If you have some time and you want to consider it, you might even want to write a few of the topic sentences out and really get that paper under control before you dig into that and start writing the introduction.
Yeah, and the last step is just to review your whole plan and just think about how does this whole plan answer that question? And do I have distinct topics in my body paragraphs? Do I understand my plan? You're not graded on your plan, though, Andrew. So why do you need to write all that stuff?
You're not graded on your plan, but as an examiner, I know you feel the same way. I really appreciate it when I see that plan. It shows me that the student has taken 10 or 15 minutes and really been thoughtful and really approached the question in a systematic way. Typically, responses without outlines, Mr. Giles, I have found are rambling and out of control.
Yeah, that is so true, because the more you have a plan, the more you, just like with annotating with the paper one, the more you've got that plan, the more you'll have to say.
What do you say we dive into 2 sample questions and break them down and get moving here?
I like that. Let's do that. So we're going to look at 2 questions and just kind of do a little bit of a discussion about what we see the question asking us. So read the first question we picked.
The first question reads, how is home depicted in 2 of the works you have studied? And what is its significance? Mr. Giles, dig into that question and let's talk about some of the keywords and approaches.
Okay, so we're thinking about, again, the home is in parentheses. I think that's really interesting. So we're thinking about how that is depicted. So we're thinking about the significance of being home. So I'm going to start to think about my own associations with home. So I think about home as a place of safety, of comfort, and security. Maybe that could be reflected in
well, Mr. Giles, sounds like you had a good home life. Maybe for me, home reminds me of trauma, suffering, and pain. So define that word through the lens of your paper and make sure you put that in the introduction so the examiner knows how you are approaching those key words.
Yeah, home can also be a physical place, of course, but home can also be a state of mind.
That is
so
very
we're getting
true.
kind of philosophical about it. So we're trying to think about how can we approach that.
Also pay attention to the word how, Mr. Giles. To me, that implies I really need to zero in on literary craft, which is one of our main ideas that we need to focus on when reviewing for the test.
The paper 2 question almost always will have a how or some by what means. They're going to ask you to zero in on that authorial choices. Last thing is
the word significance, of course, meaning the so what. That's where you want to tap into your thematic knowledge and thinking about the meaning of your works in relation to the message for the world today. I think it's a pretty straightforward question to answer.
Yeah, but I like it.
Let's look at one more, Mr. Giles.
Okay,
what do you say?
Sounds good.
You want to read this one out?
I'll read this one. Authors use the portrayal of characters who are somewhat trapped as a means to criticize society. Discuss the extent to which this is true.
All right, the very first thing that jumps at me, Mr. Giles, is this is a to what extent question. Could you talk a little bit about how to answer such a question? Discuss the extent to which you think this is true.
This, again, is something we'd probably want to integrate into our thesis statement to really think about how much are these characters indeed trapped, and so we want to think about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you focus on the word trapped. That's a word I would definitely define in the introduction of my paper so the examiner and me, for that matter, have a clear idea of where I want to take this paper in relationship to that word. Lastly, are we focusing on symbols? Are we focusing on motifs? What are we focusing on in this question, Giles?
We are zeroing in on the characters and thinking about the portrayal of the characters. What's the word portrayal mean?
The way that author has presented those characters, the way they have put them out into the story and linking them to ideas through their literary craft.
Last phrase is criticize society.
Go for it, Giles. I think, I would be writing about this inherently automatically, but specifically being asked for that, what does the student need to do here?
Yeah, they really need to think about that when people are trapped, obviously that's not a good thing, right? So we want to think about how that's being portrayed and then how that represents something about society.
This is a really good time to link back into time and space. Think about what that text meant for that particular context in which it was written. You can go with intertextuality and the comparative aspect, but don't forget about that time and space, which is another area of exploration of our course.
Ooh, nice. Good
Mr. Giles, what do you say we conclude our video for today? We hope that we've given you some approaches to succeed on the paper 2. We've told you what it's about. Now, come back for that next video on why should they come back for the next video, Mr. Giles?
Because we're gonna light up an amazing paper that we think does an excellent job. It has the Fabulous Four embedded in it, and I think just looking at a good sample piece of writing will help you.
Yeah, we're gonna take that second question, trapped, and we're gonna explode that into response. So thanks for joining. We hope this gets you off and running on the paper 2. Come back for us in a couple days and we'll show you that complete paper. Thanks for watching, everyone, and take care.